The question is, do you lose weight? Well, anecdotal evidence by myself personally, and I do intermittent fasting, is yes, you do. When I first started intermittent fasting, I was around about 17 stone, which is about 238 pounds or 108 kg. And after about 2 months, I'm now 15 stone 11. In fact, I weighed myself this morning, which is about 221 pounds or about 100 kilograms. So that's actually a loss of 17 pounds, which is the equivalent of 7.7 kg in just over 2 months, which is actually about 10 weeks. So on average, I've been losing about 1.7 pounds per week or 0.77 of a kilogram. That's not the whole story though, because during the time I've been intermittent fasting, I've also introduced weight training. So I've definitely gained muscle mass. It's also actually higher than the studies, and I'll come on to that in a minute, some studies that have shown the average weight loss during intermittent fasting. So on the basis that I've been weight training and gaining muscle mass, I've actually lost more fat. So if I assume that I've gained 2 pounds of muscle mass, which is about the weight of a bag of sugar in the UK, which is about a kilogram of sugar, which is not a lot when you think about it, that would mean that over a 10-week period, I've actually lost 19 pounds, which is about 8.6 kilograms, or nearly 2 pounds a week. Now, of course, that won't carry on because at some point I will have lost nearly all of my fat. I mean, your body will retain a certain level of fat percentage, but I've lost my stomach, or a big part of it. I've lost my love handles. That's my subcutaneous fat, in other words, the layer of fat under my skin. What I don't know is how much visceral fat, which is the fat inside your body around organs like your liver, kidneys and so on. I don't know how much visceral fat I had beforehand, and equally I don't know how much visceral fat I've perhaps lost in those 19 pounds of fat. But either way, I have lost probably about 19 pounds of fat over a 10-week period doing intermittent fasting. Going back to the gaining of muscle weight of 2 pounds over a 10-week period, if I look at a study, that's not unreasonable. And if I just turn to that study now, the article is headed Increasing Lean Mass and Strength, which was a comparison of high frequency strength training to lower frequency strength training. This study was published on PubMed and was by the University of Central Missouri. And it was including participants who already have strength training experience. And on average, they gained 2.18 to 2.33 pounds or 0.99 to 1.06 kg of muscle over a course of 8-week training program. So for myself to gain potentially 2 pounds over a 10-week period is actually very feasible. The training in the study was 3 times per week, which is what I do. The exercising involved 3 sets per muscle group per session, which is again what I do. The study actually included 7 women, 12 men, with an average age of just under 35. Now, I'm nearly 60, although when this airs on YouTube, I will be 60 because I'm 60 next month. And there is argument or research that says that as you age, you may not gain muscle mass as well as when you are younger. So that was a really interesting study that gave me confidence that I probably have gained around about 2 pounds of muscle mass. It might be slightly more, it might be slightly less. And bearing in mind that people that just start off weight training, which is effectively what I did because I hadn't weight trained for quite some time when I started, they tend to gain more weight at the very beginning because your muscles are under more stress when they first start. As you progress down the weight training route, your muscles become more used to the training and they don't gain so much muscle over time. But one important thing I would like to get across from doing this video about losing weight as a result of intermittent fasting is that how good I feel. I feel really, really fit, strong and healthy. And having lost all that weight, I'm lean around my center. I've lost that big tummy, although I didn't have a massive tummy, but I did have a tummy. I've lost my love handles and it feels really, really good. I'm certainly more cut. I've always had broad shoulders, but they're slightly broader because I've increased the muscle around the shoulder from the muscle exercises, and my body comes down or much leaner down to my waist. And actually, one of the things I'm wanting to try and do is to get a six-pack at 60. And by removing that layer of subcutaneous fat, I'm well on the way to doing that, and obviously exercising the muscles to create that six-pack look. Now that may be something that you're not looking to do, but I'm just wanted to emphasize the fact that by doing intermittent fasting, you will lose weight and you will feel really good, because intermittent fasting has many, many other benefits other than losing weight. Sure, I'll come on to a comment about that further in the video. Now, that was anecdotal evidence of myself losing weight, which I think in itself is pretty powerful. But there's a couple of articles. This first one, there was a diet review, Intermittent Fasting for Weight Loss on Harvard. A systematic review of 40 studies found that intermittent fasting was effective for weight loss, with a typical loss of 7 to 11 pounds over 10 weeks. Now, that's pretty good. I'm slightly above that, so of course that was an average. And you may lose a little bit less, you may lose a little bit more. And I think it depends upon what you start off as in weight, but it will also be different whether you're a male or a female. A male and female lose weight slightly differently, and they react slightly differently to intermittent fasting. I would also like to share this article on PubMed about a collective review of intermittent fasting studies. So this collective research article on PubMed headed Intermittent Fasting and Weight Loss. The study selection included 41 articles describing 27 trials addressing weight loss in overweight and obese patients. All 27 intermittent fasting trials found weight loss of 0.8 to 13% of baseline weight. In other words, how much they lost from when they started intermittent fasting. 12 studies comparing intermittent fasting to calorie restriction found equivalent results. Now, the difference between intermittent fasting and calorie restriction is that intermittent fasting is about when you eat, not necessarily how much you eat, so you restrict your eating to a particular window, versus calorie restriction is that you carry on eating throughout the day, perhaps having 3 meals and even maybe snacking in between, but you've restricted how much you eat, how many calories. But I would argue, and the research shows, that by intermittent fasting rather than calorie restriction, you have many, many other benefits in addition to the weight loss. So I encourage you to look into doing intermittent fasting. 5 studies that included patients with type 2 diabetes documented improved glycemic control or blood sugar level control. One study of 51 obese people with type 2 diabetes, intermittent fasting is a viable alternative to calorie restriction for weight loss and glycemic control in type 2 diabetes. There was another study of 41 obese people with type 2 diabetes. Intermittent fasting was considered safe in type 2 diabetes, promotes weight loss and glycemic control. One other study I'll pick out here is of 54 obese people with type 2 diabetes. Intermittent fasting is more effective than calorie restriction for weight loss and glycemic control in type 2 diabetes. So I have to say, for me, that article is pretty compelling, and that just picks up on only a couple of the extra benefits of intermittent fasting. So we've got weight loss, which is what this video is all about. If you've got type 2 diabetes, studies show that it's safe to do so, or to do intermittent fasting, and it'll improve that. It'll improve your insulin resistance and glycemic control. That has to be a good thing. Now, I'm just going to pause there to let you know that I'm not a doctor, but I've been studying intermittent fasting. I'm doing intermittent fasting myself. So I recommend that if you're new to this concept, and particularly if you've got type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes, or if you have any other condition you're taking medication, please speak with your doctor before you embark on intermittent fasting. So now on to why is it that you actually lose weight when you're intermittent fasting? Well, there's actually two reasons. Reason number one is that because when you're intermittent fasting, you're effectively reducing how much you're eating. So you're reducing your calorie intake. Now I'm doing what's called the 16-8 intermittent fast. So I fast for 16 hours and I eat during an 8-hour window. And by doing that, effectively what I'm doing is I'm skipping breakfast. So if, for example, I ate my last meal at 8 o'clock last night, I won't be eating again till midday. Sometimes I'll leave that till 1 o'clock. So I actually fast for 17 hours rather than just the 16. But essentially, you then eat in an 8-hour window. So you have, well, I still call it my breakfast because the definition of breakfast is you're breaking your fast. But I don't eat my breakfast until midday. But then I have my evening meal and I might have one or two things in between, maybe an apple or a pear or something like that, because I like to eat a lot of fruit. But that is it. I have 2 meals. And that's one of the reasons why you lose weight, because you've restricted how many calories, or you've dropped a meal during the day. Some people actually only have 1 meal a day by intermittent fasting. And of course, if you do that, you will actually probably lose a lot more weight much quicker. But I prefer to do 8 hours of eating and 2 meals. The second reason why you lose weight doing intermittent fasting is that after around about 12 hours of fasting, your body does this metabolic switch. So essentially, up to the 12-hour window after eating, your body is using the glycogen stores in your liver, converted into energy essentially, and your body runs on those glycogen stores. So it's running on effectively glucose. However, sometime after 12 hours, and possibly 12 to 36 hours, depending on your own personal glycogen stores, how long you've been intermittent fasting, and various other factors, you do this metabolic switch whereby your body switches from running on effectively glucose or glycogen to running on ketones. And actually your body in certain instances prefers ketones. Your brain certainly does. And ketones are produced by the breakdown of fat. In other words, your fat burning. Another factor that will affect when you start producing ketones is how much exercise you do during your fasting period. Now, I always do my exercise, my weight training or whatever I'm doing if I'll go for a bike ride during my fasting period, because then you're burning up more of your glycogen stores much quicker. So you switch to the metabolic switch happens sooner, so you start running on ketones. And that way you will start burning more fat, which is possibly why I've actually burnt more fat than the average, because I've been optimizing everything. I've sometimes extended my fast. In fact, actually on probably about 5 or 6 occasions over the last 10 weeks, I've done 2 24-hour fasts. I've done a couple of 22 hours, 18 hours. So I've actually extended my fast. In fact, the 18-hour fast, I've done quite a lot of those actually, because what I do is if I'm going out in the evening, I extend when I break my fast, because if I'm not eating till later, I shunt forward the 8-hour eating window. So that's probably one of the reasons why I've burnt more fat than the average. So I'd suggest to you, don't do intermittent fasting just for the weight loss, because once you've lost the weight, your reason for doing it has gone. You must have a much stronger why for doing intermittent fasting, because that way you'll continue to do it. And I'm going to pop up a video that I did about your reason why, because by having a stronger reason why, look at all the other benefits of intermittent fasting, you're much more likely to stay with the intermittent fasting concept. So by having a stronger why, you're much more likely to stay with it and keep fit, strong and healthy, which is what I want to do. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care and bye for now.